Andy Cohen claims RHONJ's future won't be decided for a long time. Stop asking. The Real Housewives of New Jersey has been in limbo for 4 months, and there's a good chance it will remain that way until this time next year if Andy Cohen is to be believed. The long-running reality series hit a significant snag in the ratings and storyline department with season 14, which focused on 2 different friend groups because everyone was at odds. The Real Housewives franchise has featured one group of women throughout the various iterations, so certain cast members refusing to film with one another during RHONJ season 14 compelled producers to take a different approach following the season finale. Instead of the traditional reunion, Bravo aired a special that kept the 2 bickering sides apart and left viewers with no resolution. Resolution is only really necessary if most of the cast is returning, but we've been hearing for months now that producers in Bravo are interested in rebuilding RHONJ from the ground up. That decision didn't work well for the Real Housewives of New York City. Despite a relatively decent season 14 with a brand new cast, season 15 has been plagued with minimal storylines. There's a genuine possibility that the Big Apple set entry will cease to exist in a few weeks. RHONJ has one thing going for it. It does pull in decent numbers compared to the other cities, which have cratered in the traditional ratings this season. Andy Cohen vents his frustration about continued questions about RHONJ. However, Andy Cohen seems to be growing tired of reporters and fans' continued questions about the show's future. Initially, he indicated that decisions about the show would come in early 2025, but he's now gone on record, stating that an update isn't coming for a long time. "You're not gonna get it for, like, a year, so everyone stop asking," he told Us Weekly in response to a question about when we might expect fresh intel. "And I keep saying you are going to get nothing. So stop asking," he added. If an update isn't made until late 2025, RHONJ will not be able to return to the air until sometime in 2026. If that is the case, we could expect many of season 14's cast back. Producers could hold out for a while in hopes that Teresa Giudice and Melissa Gorga will be open to mending fences because, let's face it, their livelihoods depend on the show sticking around at this point. RHONJ season 15 may not even happen. As the longest-serving cast members, they must be paid a lot of money to bicker on-screen all season long, so it's hard to imagine them walking away. While a whole show reboot could move the show in the right direction, viewers may give up and move on to other shows. It will be an interesting year ahead because we can't wait to hear what producers and the network have planned for RHONJ season 15. Andy Cohen adjusted his lapel mic and took a deep breath. It was the start of another week, another stream of queries about the fate of the Real Housewives of New Jersey. For months, speculation had been swirling like a Category 5 hurricane. Rumors of cast shakeups, alliances fraying at the edges, and production delays had only fanned the flames. When are you making the announcement? Is Teresa staying? What about Melissa? His inbox was inundated with messages from fans, tabloids, and even a few cast members fishing for hints. And now, during his latest SiriusXM show, he'd finally reached his breaking point. "Listen," Andy began, his voice a mix of exasperation and his signature charm. "I'm going to say this once, and then I'm done. The future of RHONJ will not be decided for a long time. So stop asking." The statement hung in the air for a moment, and then the phone lines exploded. Caller after caller tried to poke holes in his declaration. "But Andy, you always say that, and then surprise us with a trailer 2 weeks later," one caller accused. "Not this time," Andy replied firmly. "Trust me, it's complicated." Behind the scenes, complicated didn't even begin to cover it. For years, RHONJ had thrived on its central drama, the seemingly eternal feud between Teresa Giudice and her sister-in-law, Melissa Gorga. But now, the cracks had deepened to the point of no return. Filming the reunion for the latest season had been akin to walking into a war zone, with security on high alert and producers barely able to keep the peace. Andy's mind flashed back to that infamous reunion taping. Teresa, clad in a glittering gown that screamed, "Look at me," had hurled accusations at Melissa like daggers. Melissa, for her part, was no shrinking violet. Her retorts had been sharp, and the tension was so palpable, it seemed like even the cameras might short-circuit. Andy had spent hours mediating, his usual arsenal of witty remarks and calming diplomacy proving utterly ineffective. "Why can't you two just stop?" he had asked at one point, rubbing his temples. Teresa had fixed him with a glare. "Because she's fake, Andy. And she's been riding my coattails for years." Melissa's response had been equally venomous. "Oh, please. If it weren't for me, this show would have died 3 seasons ago." The reunion had ended in a stalemate, with neither woman willing to back down. And now, months later, the network was faced with an impossible choice. Keep both and risk continued chaos, or let one go and risk alienating a significant portion of the fan base. Andy's thoughts were interrupted by his assistant, who popped into the studio with a clipboard. "Your 3 o'clock is here," she said. "Great," Andy muttered, though his enthusiasm was minimal. His 3 o'clock was a meeting with the Bravo executives to discuss the exact topic he just told the world to stop asking about. As he made his way to the conference room, he rehearsed his lines. "Be diplomatic. Be optimistic. Be Andy." The executives were already seated when he arrived, their faces a mix of anticipation and apprehension. So one began, "Where do we stand?" Andy sighed. "Honestly, we're at a crossroads. Teresa and Melissa can't be in the same room without a fight breaking out. The fans are divided. If we pick one over the other, we're alienating half our audience." "What about bringing in new blood?" another exec suggested. "We've done it before." "Sure," Andy said, "but RHONJ isn't like the other franchises. The family dynamic is what makes it unique. You can't just slot in a new housewife and expect it to work." The room fell silent as they all contemplated the enormity of the decision. Finally, one of the senior executives spoke. "What if we take a break? Give the cast some time to cool off and revisit the show later." Andy nodded slowly. It wasn't a bad idea. A hiatus could allow tensions to simmer down and give the network time to strategize. But he also knew the risks. Out of sight, out of mind, especially in the fast-moving world of reality TV. "We'll think on it," he said diplomatically. "But for now, let's keep our options open." As he left the meeting, Andy's phone buzzed with a text. It was from Teresa. "Call me ASAP. We need to talk." Andy groaned. He'd been dodging her calls for weeks, knowing she'd try to sway him in her favor. But he also knew he couldn't avoid her forever. Taking a deep breath, he dialed her number. "Andy." Teresa answered on the first ring, her voice dripping with urgency. "What's going on?" "I keep hearing rumors." "Teresa, you know I can't discuss that," he said evenly. "But you're keeping me, right? You'd be crazy to let me go. I'm the OG." "Teresa," Andy said, his patience wearing thin, "these decisions aren't made lightly. And they're not made overnight." She huffed but didn't press further, and Andy ended the call with a promise to keep her in the loop. Almost immediately, his phone buzzed again. This time, it was Melissa. He didn't even bother answering. That evening, as Andy settled onto his couch with a glass of wine, he scrolled through social media. The hashtags hashtag RHONJ and hashtag Team Teresa versus hashtag Team Melissa were trending yet again. Fans were dissecting his "stop asking" comment, theorizing what it might mean. Some believed it was a sign that the show was on the verge of cancellation. Others thought it indicated a complete recast. Andy sighed. He knew better than anyone how passionate the Housewives fan base could be. It was part of what made the franchise so successful, but it was also exhausting. For now, all he could do was wait and hope that time, and maybe a little distance, would bring some clarity to the chaos. Until then, the fate of RHONJ would remain one of reality TV's greatest mysteries.